I'm thankful I had a couple nights that will hopefully mark the end of the trend of these very hazy nights of dreaming and difficult to recalling dreams. Um, so this is the night before last. Uh, had some trouble with the last video I tried. So the dream that preceded, or the scene that preceded this lucid experience, was a really weird, interesting dream involving my mother, sister, and some of her grade school friends. And I was walking up the street towards the end of the dream, like with just a towel on. And next thing I know, I was in a house. I was in the house of a family who we knew we went to school with, like K through 12 with. But I was talking about like buying or renting out this house. And I was talking with my mother, who, it was weird. She wasn't there or on the phone, but somehow I was talking to my mother. And she was saying how, it was kind of weird to be in that house because, the guy had died there. He didn't actually die there though. He died doing a stick up or whatever. And I'm just like, well, and I was saying something like, well, I'll live on the other side then. Like, it was a duplex. It wasn't really, but, and I was looking at these numbers. It was like an address, and it was like 30 something A and B. I'm like, well, I'll live on B instead. And I was walking over, but at some point, I should think possibly at some point prior to this, I remember thinking and worrying, like, wait a minute, like, how did I get here? I remember thinking, like, maybe in a vague sense that I was dreaming, because I remember worrying, like, wait a minute, if I'm dreaming, when did I go to sleep? Because last thing I remember, I was walking up that street, in the dream I just mentioned, walking up that street. I'm like, well, I don't even remember going to sleep. I hope I didn't go to sleep, like, on the street somewhere naked or something. So maybe that was part of what began to trigger this lucid experience. So I walk over and I'm like, well, I'm not going to go to this other side, this B side of this duplex. I'm just going to make this the other side, which I don't fully understand. But either way, it was in some way I had the idea that I could control this environment. So a few, seconds later, and it's weird because there's still a bit a haziness to it, a sketchiness to it, a jumping from place to place within this dream, because after this, I guess I became more convinced that this was a dream. I guess you'd say I was fully convinced at this point. And after going over to this other side and like in through a hall and into like a kitchen or near the exit area, there was like a computer, and I vaguely remember music playing. And I a few seconds later, I remember looking at my hands, and I was kind of excited. I was like, those are definitely some dream hands, because their fingers are kind of stretched out to the side and smeared a little bit, and I may have had 6 fingers also. So anyway, I decided I was going to try the spin technique, but I couldn't remember where I was supposed to look. I look down, look up, close my eyes, or what. So I think I just looked straight ahead, but it didn't work. So at this point, I guess I got pretty confident that I wasn't going to ruin this dream, because I decided I was going to just run and crash out of the front window, and I did that. But it's weird because I don't really remember hitting the ground. I just remember crashing out, and it was kind of a slow-mo effect to it. And then next thing I know, I was running. I don't really remember running to the next destination. I just remember being there, which was on the opposite corner, which was right across the street from my high school. The houses by the high school, and then there's like the street goes like that, and I was over here now, and it was a fence, and on the fence there was a series of signs, small signs like the size of a sheet of paper. Most of them were illegible, almost like some foreign script like Hebrew or something. But there was one white sign with red writing, and it said something about Coke on it, but it was still gibberish, like in that it was like Coke something else on the end of it. And there was a guy there, so I was a little bit excited, like, oh, maybe I'll try to engage this dream character, something I've yet to really do in a lucid dream, and I can tie this into the sign. And so I decided to ask him about the sign, And so I asked him, like, well, what does this sign say? And he came over, and this was I don't know, teen to 20s white guy. Didn't really look like anyone from real life, working life. And he tells me, he's like, yo, it says, and let's just say it said Kokum, Kokum, Kokum over and over again. And he's like, yeah, it says Kokum, Kokum. Like, that was just normal and okay. He was pretty nonchalant about it. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see a young girl, what appeared to be a young girl. And I think that's my, like, sex drive playing into a lot of my dreams. But as I turned to her, she was actually an older woman in her 40s or 50s. And she was pushing her grandmother or mother in a wheelchair or a stroller, actually. And so I went over and I talked to her briefly, and she told me that her husband died. And it was a really brief conversation. I think after that I was just like, oh, you know, I'm sorry to hear that. And she was like, well, nice to meet you. And I, like, gave her a hug, I think, and I, like, hugged the old lady and kissed her on the shoulder. And then the white guy who was there with me, he did the same. And after that, I turned back to him and I asked him how to get to 2 locations, neither of which I remember. And he says, well, you know, the first one he says, you go this way, down past the high school, down Taylor Road. And then the other one he said, you go that way, pointing back across the high school field. And then I said, well, how do I get to C2? That's my ex-girlfriend. I haven't seen in a while. And he's like, that way, pointing the same direction he pointed across the field. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not really helpful. He just told me the same way. And for a second I thought, well, maybe I'll just go that way, keep going further that way. But I was like, no, forget that. I'll try spin technique again. So I tried it. I said I was going to look down at the ground this time, because I figured that little swirl thing like you see when you were a kid, spinning around getting dizzy, like maybe that would help with the kind of teleporting somewhere else. But I guess you said it didn't work, because I woke up, but I woke up as Malcolm Jamal Warner in a fictional sitcom which never existed, or I had like this mohawk cut, and the joke, I guess, was that I had fallen asleep in a public place, and I was kind of flipping around, moving around, doing all this embarrassing stuff, and this guy made this joke like, oh, this is the way he, like, chose to end his career, and it was so funny, but it's like, waking up, it really wasn't that funny. But so yeah, I gotta start doing those reality checks every time I wake up, because I think I would have realized that I'm not Malcolm Jamal Warner had I done a reality check, and maybe could have gone back into, you know, lucidity, but unfortunately. But anyway, it was still interesting. You know, the longest one I've had thus far, I was able to kind of go from one setting to another. Usually it's been like one setting, really brief, it's over. And, you know, I got to go out, I got to talk to people, that's different. And despite the fact that there was still a weird haziness to it, and I questioned lucidity. I had really questioned whether or not this was a very realistic dream about a lucid dream. Just in that there seemed to be so many gaps, like between me jumping out of that window, running, and me appearing in the next spot. And just, I don't know, I guess just other little things like the first portion. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess that was the beginning, but the jumping out of the window, that's something I would never do in any of my lucid experiences. I just feel like I'd be afraid I'd wake myself up or something. And then I guess just the fact that I kind of appeared from one place to the next, and I don't know. It's the haziness that hangs over it, and the questionable nature of some of the, I guess, actions or conversations I had. It's like, I don't know. I question the lucidity of it, but maybe it's not that it wasn't lucid at all. It's just that lucidity kind of goes up and down or whatever, or you're not at a constant level of consciousness throughout the whole dream. I guess that's why there's different techniques to try to maintain that. But anyway, man, I feel like there's more to say, but I don't want this video to be too long like the last one was. I guess that's about it. I don't know, whatever. Any feedback, I guess. I guess that about covers it. Hope I have another one for you guys soon. Peace.